Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for choosing to attend the session. So I will quickly move to the second slide because I think just to give a bit of positionality to this paper. Okay, you should be seeing my second picture. Am I correct? There's a pin on a map. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So I'll quickly start off with positionality. Why did I decide to write this? Basically, I am coming from a background of primary teaching, in which I've spent about 8 years in a classroom, out of which the last class which I taught was completely multicultural. So I had 16 students in class, all foreigners, and somehow it ignited in me some like a passion for me to explore more multicultural classrooms. This is also a small part of a bigger, like I am currently doing a study, doctoral, where I am trying to see what are the perceptions of the teachers in the primary schools and the leaders vis-a-vis the LOF. The LOF, I will be speaking about it soon, but basically currently the island is shifting from a curriculum which is based on content to a curriculum which is based on outcomes. So this is only a bit of positionality to understand the motivation of the study. Okay, if I had to move to the key terms, so in my title there are 4 key terms, and I would like to explain them a bit. Learning outcomes framework is the first part which I would like to explain. So as of 2018, the island has started shifting slowly, as I said, from a curriculum which is based on content to a curriculum which is based on outcomes. This is being done in a staggered way, and hopefully by 2023 now, all the classrooms in the primary, in the secondary, in the are going to be following this LOF. Basically, I wouldn't like to call it the introduction because it's only an enactment of it, because this has been in the pipeline since 2012. The NCF, which is a national framework, has been suggesting the need for a framework which is based on outcomes. So this is it. Now, the second term, internationalization. Basically, in my experience in the classroom, but also now, the island is becoming so multicultural that we cannot continue thinking in a local kind of way. We need to think globally. So basically, I wanted to sort of merge this idea of internationalization with the curriculum revolution, which we are currently experiencing in our schools. The third term is primary schooling.
Sorry,
yes.
Sorry, because we are back on the first slide, so maybe you have to move. Okay, now we are on the. Yeah, yes.
Okay. Sorry. The third part, the term which I'd like to explain, primary schooling. I mean, we're all comfortable with this, but it is very important to keep in mind that our schools are based on a British system. So somehow, even our primary schooling has migrated to us, and this is a very important concept. It isn't native. It has been sort of important. So this importation of the curriculum, the LOF, I will be explaining this importation of the way the schools function. Somehow, we cannot just talk about us being native. Malta, just to quickly explain, the LOF is the first curriculum framework since Malta has accessed the EU. So basically, the LOF had to reflect a number of policies. It couldn't just be a curriculum framework based on Malta only. Since we now are within a bigger community, this needs to be reflected. Now, the research questions quickly. In my paper, I have tried to answer these three. Today, I will be trying to focus. I will be focusing on the number 3. But in my paper, part of it is based on the LOF. What are the roots? Where is it coming from? What is the rationale? Basically, we cannot think that this is something new which has never been done before, because systems like the LOF has happened in many countries, in Australia, in South Africa, in New Zealand, etc. So basically, the roots where this is stemming from, this goes back to other countries, other times. The second part, which I will try to discuss today too, is how is the LOF trying to compare LOF, the Learning Outcomes Framework. I will be explaining soon, but basically it's a curricular framework where all the schools have to be engaged on the same framework. So it's like attainment levels which every student needs to reach within a level. The third part, the third question, which is in my opinion my favorite somehow, is what are the recommendations? So we have primary schools. These primary schools are heavily multicultural. What are the suggestions? Okay, if I had to move to this curriculum, and I decided to put that picture because curriculum means different things to different people. What is important is for us to understand what curriculum is not. This is something which in literature, in theories, this is something which is crucial. It might mean different things, but it's very important to know what it does not mean. If we had to go back 1920s, the curriculum was very much based on the industrial method, on the factory level. So basically, then we moved to the curriculum as a tool which is preparing students for the adult working world. And then we moved to the curriculum is something which the children learn. Now we are talking about the curriculum as a liberating experience. The idea of a school society which needs liberation, which needs a curriculum which gives freedom. If I had to explain these three quickly, actually there are 4, but I will be talking about these 3. This is like my theoretical framework. Different people think differently, as we said. The first type of curriculum is this, the transfer of information, the downloading. You have empty children, and we think we are downloading information in them. So basically, we are talking about the idea of transferring, the traditional textbook approach. Then if we have to move to the second type of curriculum, which is a product, it's a destination. It's where small steps to be mastered so that then you move towards a desired goal, towards a desired end product. The third type, which is more progressive, is the curriculum as a process where it is not only about the knowledge, it's about self, it's an organic process kind of, where the individual empowerment is more important than the actual performance or the actual knowledge which you have downloaded. There is another part of this cycle which is called the curriculum as a praxis. I will not be explaining it in depth today, but basically it's about the curriculum as an ongoing social process. So based on the hidden curriculum, based on a curriculum which is somewhere between formal and informal. Now, if I had to move, so what is the LOF? The LOF is this. Basically, it's a transition. Currently, Malta is moving from a content-based to an outcomes-based. What is the difference? The syllabi which are based on content are basically based on knowledge which you need to learn. So imagine you're a student, you're in year 6, you need to learn what perimeter is. So the teacher is teaching you mathematics, what is it? Now the LOF is more of a staggered way, and if I can show you the next slide so you can understand, even somebody has asked me about this. It is a framework based on levels from 1 to 10. Level 1 to 4 is dedicated to early childhood. That's childcare, kinder 1, kinder 2, up to year 2. And it moves on according to the levels. I am explaining this so that we keep in mind that learners from a migrant background are also included somewhere here. And eventually I will be explaining that 1 out of every 10 students in Malta is a learner from a migrant experience. So we cannot just talk about the LOF, seeing it like this, and thinking this is only for Maltese people or the natives or the EU citizens, and that is it. So this is the framework. As I said earlier, the LOF is the first curricular framework which has been implemented, or which is being implemented, because it's a staggered approach since Malta joined the EU. This has serious implications, and I will try to explain. I've chosen only 2 of the 4 documents on which the LOF is sort of based. The first one is the key competences. So this is a document which has been developed because of a globalized reality in the EU. And the document says all citizens living within the EU, to be fair, there is a bit of a mistake, because the document says all EU citizens, which I disagree, because we have citizens in the EU which are not actually EU citizens. And that has sort of an implication too. But the document is saying that all EU citizens need to have this array of competences to function properly in society. And these 8 terms are then reflected in the LOF as cross-curricular themes. So the LOF decided that the 8 themes are then, they were somehow changed or minimized to 6 themes. And if you had to read through the LOF, you can see that these 6 themes are trying to be embedded through the whole framework. The second document which I would like to discuss or to explain is Europe 2020, which is now in discussion to move to Europe 2030. Basically, this is a strategy for growth. And in that document, in the title, there is a very important keyword, inclusive. If we had to think of inclusion, we cannot just think about students who have an additional need, a different need, an impairment. Yes, but not only. Learners who are deriving from a migrant experience also need to be considered as part of this inclusion. Now, this strategy basically argues that for EU citizens or citizens who live in the EU to be fully aligned to these policies, there needs to be investment in training at an educational level. And I will explain eventually how this is being done, but in my opinion, it is not being done enough. And I will recommend also eventually I will recommend some recommendation towards how to align these two. However, what I wanted to discuss here is, so the LOF is the first framework which is being introduced in Malta after the EU accession. However, the LOF was actually written in a in a joint effort between a UK institution and the government in Malta. So my question is, how can a curriculum framework reflect policies from the EU? It is being written by people who do not live here, but at the same time, it needs to reflect a reality in Malta. I know this is quite a hot issue, but how can we talk about the curriculum being native, being realistic to our needs, when it needs to reflect EU bigger policies? At the same time, it was written or devised by foreigners, but then it needs to be enacted by teachers who live in Malta, who are supporting classrooms in Malta, etc. Okay, I move to the next slide, multicultural reality. I think it's very clear we are living in a multicultural reality, and I will give you some statistics. This is scholastic year 2017-2018. and there are some figures there. Basically, schools in Malta are divided in two: state, non-state, which then are part of church and then independent schools. If we had to look at the second part, 11% of all students in Malta were learners from a migrant experience, which means that 1 out of 10 in every classroom or in our system is basically coming from a migrant background, which then moves me to, I am quoting here, the LOF, to give entitlement to all learners in Malta. And I decided to put all in orange and in bold and bigger, because that has serious implications on our provision. First of all, is the LOF being student-centered? So, in my paper, I have discussed outcomes-based education, and I also explained what are the rules. But if we had to talk about the LOF as being learner-centered, the emphasis should shift. It is not what the teacher wants to achieve. It is not only a question of outcomes which need to be ticked. It is not about the paper which the parent is going to receive at home with the ticking of what the LO is trying, what the student is trying to achieve only. But if I also quote, it is about what the learner is understanding, demonstrating, and becoming. And this has implications. Why? Because learners who are coming from a migrant experience are providing something new, something different to our classrooms in a way. So it is not only about outcomes to be ticked or knowledge to be transferred, but it is also the idea of what are the students actually bringing. What did the government do, or what are we trying to do? A unit is a unit which was set up in 2014. Basically, if you had to read an influential report about what is happening in Europe in schools, different countries are doing different things. For example, we have countries, for example, like Slovakia, Scotland, Czech Republic, where there is no kind of induction process, where the learners are placed directly in a mainstream class. However, in Malta, we have set up this. In 2017, we had learners coming on from 55 different countries, so that's quite a number. And basically, learners who are not comfortable or who do not know the languages, English, Maltese, are first transferred, or they go through a system of induction. It's a year, it's a program where the learners are learning to communicate in English, Maltese, other subjects. The unit has also other services, pull-outs and after-school clubs, etc. But what I want to explain is that there is an induction process, which is a year, where the learners are basically shifting from their native country to an induction process in Malta, which is a year, and then move to mainstream. This is also reflected or aligned to a policy in Malta, which was, somebody's writing on the chat.
Yes, but they're just saying well done. And
okay, sorry. Okay. So basically, the learner comes from a migrant experience, then moves to an induction program, and then moves to mainstream, which is great. A year ago, we had a launch of a policy about inclusion in Malta. And the policy speaks about inclusion in all its facets. As I explained, it is not only students who exhibit an impairment or a challenge, but it is also learners, all. Now, the policy has a diversity wheel. And if you had to look up closer, if you had to look at the second and the third slice, you can see that the policy has about 30% of it based on learners who are coming from a diverse language experience, from a diverse spiritual experience. So technically, this has a lot of implications on where are we heading with the LOF. Now, I will move to my recommendations because I know that the time is pressing. So, in the paper I explain further, but I have 4 recommendations which I would like to share. 1, the need for a strategy. We cannot just have learners coming from a migrant experience, they are put into induction, then they go to mainstream, there is an LOF without a proper strategy. If we only see learners as consumers, so if they are only consuming our system without the language of learning somehow, then the role of the teacher, the role of the learner is somehow jeopardized. If we really believe that the LOF is preparing students for an unknown future, then there needs to be a proper strategy which is not only based on the learner's well-being, which we are really trying to do. We do not only focus on the academic, we really try to focus on the well-being, the happiness, the feeling good. But we are also talking about curricula here. So we need to make sure that the strategy linking both the curriculum, but also the well-being. And the LOF would be central. Why? Because the LOF, although it is a syllabus, it's content, it also provides attitudes and skills. So the LOF should not be seen only as a Maltese English science only, but it is also about attitude. It is also about the skills which the students actually need. And in this strategy, we need to make sure that the LOF is being culturally responsive. It's a big term, I know it's a big term, but since we are living in a culture where there is still a dominant culture which is shaping the discourses somehow, but on the other hand, we know that 1 out of every 10 students is a learner from a migrant experience somehow. Is the LOF allowing teachers to become culturally responsive? My second recommendation is this, curricular alignment. And here I will be basically trying to sort of remove my hat from an HOD in this unit to more of a researcher. Basically, I feel that there needs to be bigger alignment between what is currently being taught in the induction and what then happens in the mainstream. So basically, the teachers in the induction class, they are given a suggestive scheme of work. They are given like a framework on what to work. And somehow this suggestive scheme of work is based on the older syllabi. So we now need to start moving towards having a curricular alignment so that a student who does the induction brilliantly, because the teachers are really dedicated and the support services are in place and the resources are in place, but the curriculum, we don't want the students to then move to mainstream and have that sort of, okay, so now what do I actually do? So we need proper alignment. How? I move to the third. Initial training. We need initial training, especially with the teachers teaching in the induction. Just to put you in the picture, in Malta we have regular teaching and supply. Supply are teachers who are engaged because we might not have enough regular teachers to fill in the classrooms in a way. Now, the issue is this. The migrants unit had the biggest number of supply teachers in 2019. 1 out of every 10 teachers who are supply were placed in the induction course. Is this good? I am not talking about if it is good or if it is not, but if you have teachers who are teaching learners from a migrant experience during the induction, they need to be given rigorous training so that they understand where the learners are going. Because if we had to ask teachers who are supply, what is the LOF? And supply teachers, at times, they are amazing, because I meet amazing teachers who do a brilliant job, but somehow training on curriculum may be a bit lacking. So some need to invest in initial training. And the last recommendation is further training to teachers who are teaching in the mainstream, meaning when the learners move from the induction hub or the induction classes to the mainstream, they go into classrooms, they follow English and Maltese in primary, blah, blah, blah. But are the teachers in mainstream aware of what the induction is about? So the teacher is devising the lesson plan, devising the project plan, devising the scheme of work. How can the teachers in the mainstream make sure that they are keeping in mind the learners who are also coming from an induction process? So I suggest further training, not only on the LOF, which I feel, but this isn't the scenario here to discuss, but I feel that teachers need rigorous training on what the LOF is. Because of course, the teachers are teaching with the LOF and somehow not everyone seems to be understanding what the LOF is. But also, mainstream teachers need further training on, okay, what happens in the induction? Where is the student coming from? What did he do vis-a-vis the curriculum? And how can I align the curriculum to mainstream? To conclude, if somebody had to ask me, everyone, Isabel, yes, everyone, SLTs, teachers, LSCs, everyone needs to be on board to understand what happens in the induction. The induction is not a service which is only given because we have to do it because the EU is asking us. No, we are doing it because we really care for the stability, the well-being. But then we don't want a cultural shock to sort of happen. Okay, enough. You can read in my paper the other recommendations. But if I had to finish with this, if somebody had to ask me, what is the purpose of an education system? This is something which I reflect a lot about constantly. And if I had to answer in one sentence, it is preparing students for an unknown future. And when I'm preparing students for an unknown, the curriculum is a tool which needs to prepare students for an adult world which we do not know how this world is going to unfold. And within our classrooms, we also have learners coming from a migrant experience.